A Crafty Escape. Introduction. Dressing in costume as someone else can be entertaining and fun. Now, imagine that your life depends on how well you play that part. In the 19th century, that was the case for William and Ellen Craft. The Crafts were two enslaved people who disguised themselves to escape their lives in the South. Born into slavery. Like so many black people living in America during the mid 1800s, William and Ellen Craft were born into slavery. William, born in 1824, lived in Macon, Georgia. His family was owned by a man who liked to gamble. He settled his debts. The man sold off the members of William's family once at a time. William was sold when he was 16 years old. He had been apprenticing as a carpenter, and he was quite skilled. William's training and talent would prove to be valuable assets. His new enslaver, a bank cashier, realized that William could provide him with a good income. He had William work at a cabinet maker and earn money for him. Ellen was 2 years younger than William. Her father was a white man who kept Ellen's mother enslaved. Ellen had a light complexion, so much so that people didn't suspect she had a black mother. At the age of 11, Ellen was given to her newly married half-sister to do the work for a servant. Ellen moved to Macon with her half-sister's family. There, she eventually met William, a decision fueled by love. William and Ellen fell in love and wanted to be together, but marriages between enslaved people were complicated. Those who were enslaved were considered property with none of the freedoms that white people had. They needed their enslavers' permission to wed. Even if permission was granted, enslaved couples could not live together if they had different enslavers. In 1846, Ellen and William finally decided permission to marry. Received permission to marry. For 2 years, they lived apart, seeing each other only occasionally. The separation took its toll on the Crafts. They realized that at any moment, one of them could be sold and sent far away from the other. For this reason, Ellen did not want to have children. She couldn't bear the idea of having that child torn from them and sold. Eventually, the Crafts realized that the only way they could live as a family was to escape and flee north. Black people could live freely in the northern states. The big question was how the Crafts could do it without being caught. Fortunately, they had a plan. Preparing and planning. The Crafts came up with a daring scheme that involved disguising Ellen. They would escape and travel to Pennsylvania, the nearest free state. Because Ellen's skin was so light, she could pass as a white person. This would assure that she would not be questioned while traveling north. William could travel with her as a royal house servant. They would be hiding in plain sight. There was just one problem. Women of that era did not travel alone, and they certainly didn't travel with an enslaved man. Doing so would have attracted unwanted attention. The only way that plan would work was if Ellen traveled disguised as a man. Ellen, reluctant, was fearful at first. If they were caught, the penalties would be harsh. They wouldn't certainly be beaten, and might even be risking their lives. She finally agreed when they decided how her disguise would work. The night of the escape, William would cut Ellen's hair short. She would wear special undergarments to hide her figure. She would also wear a bandage around her face and green spectacles to hide her beardless skin and feminine features. To complete the disguise, Ellen would wear one arm in a sling. Ellen had never learned to read or write. The sling would help her from having us to sign her name on any paperwork needed in those days to travel. The glasses, bandage, and sling would make Ellen appear sickly. Posing as a sick person would also explain William's presence as a dutiful servant attending his enslavement. They could then travel without arousing suspicion. The Great Escape begins. The Crafts decided they would make their escape on December 21, 1848. William had been hiring money for his cabin making to fund their trip. The couple asked their enslavers for some time off so they could spend Christmas together. It was customary for enslavers to grant enslaved people a few days off during the holidays. The Crafts could take advantage of that time to escape and wouldn't be missed until they were long gone. When the day arrived, William cut Ellen's hair and helped her into her costume. They both said a prayer and went to Macon train depot to purchase tickets to Savannah, Georgia. Since travel was segregated, they boarded separate train cars and waited to begin the first leg of their trip. Suddenly, William noticed a familiar face on the platform. It was the owner of the cabinet-making shop where William worked. The man had a suspicion that William might be fleeing with his wife. He began walking through the train, searching for them. William crouched down in his seat, trembling. Just as the man reached William's train car, the departure bell sounded. He left, and William heaved a sigh of relief. He was safe. Ellen, seated in another train car, had a scare of her own. When her seatmate arrived, she turned out to be her enslaver's good friend who had known Ellen for years. Ellen sat very still and dared not speak or look up. Fortunately, her disguise was so convincing that the man greeted her without a second glance and took his seat. Ellen pretended to be deaf so she could avoid talking and giving herself away. Setting sail for freedom, the Crafts reached Savannah safely and boarded a steamer ship for Charleston, South Carolina. When the ship landed in Charleston, they tried to buy tickets to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. However, a clerk refused to sign for the couple's tickets, despite Ellen's apparent injury. The boat captain from his first ship happened to pass by and offered to help. He vouched for the pair, and soon they were on their way north again. The Crafts had several interesting encounters on their trip. Ellen was scolded by other passengers for thanking William. People didn't acknowledge enslaved people in that way. One man offered to buy William for Ellen. Others warned Ellen to beware of northern abolists who would try to persuade William to escape. Their final hurdle came in Baltimore, Maryland, slave states that shared borders with free states. The border patrols that checked for escapees. The Maryland Border Patrol demanded proof of William's ownership. The crowds feared their quest for freedom was over. The officer took pity of on the pair, however. He ordered the conductor to let them board. The crabs arrived safely in Philadelphia on Christmas Day 1848. They found shelter in the home of an abolitionist. It crossed the ocean to safety. 3 weeks after arriving in Philadelphia, the crabs went to Boston, Massachusetts. William began working again as a cabinet maker. Ellen worked as a seamstress for a while. Life was good for the crabs. Their happiness did not last, however. In 1850, Congress passed Fugitive Slave Act. The act made it a crime to harbor fugitives, even in free states. Law officers could receive a handsome reward for capturing and returning escapees to their enslavers. 2 bounty hunters from Georgia named Willis Hughes and John Knight arrived in Boston. They were intent on making money by bringing the crabs back to Georgia. They made with fierce residents from the people of Boston who knew of the crabs' incredible bravery and journey. Bostonians warned William and Ellen and harassed the bounty hunters. The terrified crabs hid with friends while being hunted, but they could not bear to live in fear. On December 1850, they set out on another journey, this time to England. The long trip home, the crabs settled in West London and had 5 children. They gave lectures against slavery throughout Great Britain. In 1860, William published a book about their escape. The crabs became teachers, ran a boarding house, and went into business to support their family. In 1870, several years after slavery had been abolished in the United States, the crabs returned to their homeland. They settled outside Savannah, Georgia, purchased a farm, and founded 2 schools for black people. However, the end of slavery didn't mean the end of crabs' struggles against an unjust society. The Ku Klux Klan, a white terrorist group, burned down the schools. In 1873, they established another school, this time in Woodville, Georgia. Anger and harassment by white people forced them to close it down. Afterwards, the crabs lost their land because no bank could loan them the money they needed for their farm. In 1890, they moved in there with their daughter and lived with her until they died. In the end, they achieved what they wanted most, to raise a family that could not be torn apart by slavery, to love one another, and to live out their lives together.